little boys had two little toys. Each had a wooden horse. Gaily they played each summer's day, warriors both, of course. One little chap then had a mishap, broke off his horse's head, wept for his toy, then cried with joy as his young playmate said,
"Okay, it's question time. What is my favourite book to write in? I suppose we'd have a book called The Butterfly Lion. Have you read it?
No, but I've heard about it and I know what it's about.
Is that good enough, I ask myself? You're a wonderful child, Sam. Read the book! That's what it was wrong for! If you understand what I mean. Anyway, it's a story about a lion, a white lion. And again, lovely true story. It was told to me by a man at a dinner table. You young people, lean forward, lean forward, lean forward. I'll tell you something. When you grow up, you've got lots to look forward to. But can I tell you the most important and happiest thing that's going to happen? You are going to go to dinner parties. When you go to dinner parties, children, it's really good fun. You get to sit at the table and be the most boring person in the whole world. It's either sitting here or there. Always, it's a rule. I was at a dinner party just like this, and the most boring person was sitting here. And he had a voice like a trombone. He was doing all right. And then suddenly, after listening to people, because they're not as boring as they sound, he said, we were talking, I don't know, we were talking about grandfathers. This was before I was a grandfather, so I was interested in grandfathers. He said, I had a grandfather once. And he said, and then I got to the city voice because he told me this story which made me like a butterfly. He said, he went to the First World War. He was 18, and he got lucky. He was in the trenches on the second day, and a shell fell, and a bit of shrapnel went into his knee. I said, that's lucky. He said, yeah, because he got sent to the hospital, out to the line of fire, 30 miles behind. And in those days, he said, it took a long time for your leg to heal, and so he was there for months and months, and the doctor said, you've got to walk up and down, you've got to exercise that muscle in your leg. He was made to walk into the village every single day. True story. And so he walked in the village one day and was sitting there in a glass of red wine, 30 miles behind the lines in France as well. Miles away from the wall, and suddenly he was shooting. You know, what's that? He walked up. And there was a circus drawn in this square in France. An old Frenchman, tears pouring down his face, was shooting into the cages. And my grandfather went up, tried to wipe the conversation. What are you all doing? Man says, my family, my circus, I can't feed them. No one comes to the circus, I've got no food, I've got no money. What would you have me? You're starving, I've eaten them for 2 weeks. And there's only one animal left alive, the old circus lion. The true story was that the young man said, well, you're not shooting that lion. And the old man said, well, you can look after the lion, you look after the lion, I can't. True story, young soldier, old Frenchman, got the lion out of its cage. They went down to the street, up to his chateau where all the officers were, and these officers came in, what's going on? What's going on? And the young man goes, so, this is a lion. The Frenchman wants to shoot the lion, he can't have that circle because the lion is the enemy of Britain. They are fighting for Britain. And the colonel said, I've got to look at that. No, we look after that. They sent him back to London, that lion lived in London 3 years in the zoo in London. And I thought, what a story. What a wonderful story. So I pitched it. And I called it the Butterfly Lion. It was your question. Where's this whole child? This one. Fine. Okay.
How many books have you written altogether?
I've written 128. Well, this is because I'm extremely old. There's a lot of books every year. But can I tell you something? Because it's a good question, but it needs answering this way. It actually doesn't matter how many. What matters is if they're any good. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I mentioned not long ago the Harry Potter books. Who were they written by?
J.K. Rowling.
Okay. How many books has she written? I can tell you. It's about 9. It's I do sadness quite a lot, I don't know. Do you know you're the best judge of that? Not me. But I can tell you what I think. It's probably a book called Private Peaceful, which is a story of a young soldier who goes to the First World War and is shot for cowardice in the face of the enemy. But it's written during the last night of a man's life, before this terrible thing is happening in the morning. And maybe writing that was the saddest thing I had to do, because when you write a book, and I'm sure you're going to do this yourself when you write, you have to lose yourself completely inside the story. You have to become the character who's telling it. So in this case, I had become 18 years old. I had been living at the time of the First World War. I had been in the First World War with my brother, whom I loved. And I had lived through all this and be waiting for this terrible thing to happen. And that's quite hard to do, even if it's imaginary. Because when you do it, you know when someone's acting on stage, when it really works, it's because they believe it. I'll give you an example of this. If you ever see, and I hope you will, next year the play of Warhorse is coming to the Lowry Theatre, which isn't that far from here, and you'll see these amazing puppets. Now when you see them, you will see that they are puppets. They're huge, they're horse size. And you can see inside them 3 puppeteers, one managing the head, one managing the heart of it, and one managing the head behind it. You can see it all. But they're so good. They so believe that they are that horse, that within minutes, you simply believe there's a horse on the stage. And when you're writing, it has to be like that. You have to lose yourself completely in what it is that you're doing, and become that person. So when you're writing a really sad story, and that is a really sad story, then yes, you feel very sad doing it. But I can't speak about which is the saddest. I want you to do that, and count up for me the number of hours of crying you do in each book, and send me a list.
What's your favourite book?
My favourite writer in the whole world is a man called Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island. He's the person I most want to be, because he could write wonderful adventure stories for young people. He could write dark novels, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, for grown-up people. He could write travel books, he could write poems, and he was a Scot. And I want to be him, but I also want to have the power of language of a man, a poet like Ted Hughes, who came from a place called Yorkshire. Have you heard of it? And I'm not just saying that. He happened to be my neighbour in Devon, and I love the man dearly. But he could write this English language as a composer makes music in the most extraordinary way, and he can make you see things through his words and feel things through it. So I'd love to have the power of the storytelling of Robert Louis Stevenson and the power of Ted Hughes when it comes to the use of words. I'd love to put the two things together and become the greatest writer in the world. But I won't be. I'm just
Hi, I'm an English teacher with secondary school though, and I hate it, but I quite frequently say, I hate reading. What would you say to those kind of kids that are reluctant readers, especially older ones?
I only know from my own experience as a teacher myself, and I taught Year 6. Are there any Year 6s here? Put your hands up. Could all the Year 6s stand up? Stand up. The rest of you can look at them. We're talking monsters here. Sit down, sit down! I have 35 little monsters like that. Much worse than your secondary kids. But here's the thing I learned about Year 6s. The only thing I really knew that worked with all 35 of them was if I found a story that I loved, forget them, that I loved, and I read it as if I loved it, then they listened. You know, the nicest letter I think I've ever got from anyone was a child who read The Butterfly Man. And she wrote this lovely letter, which said how much she liked it. And she said, and do you know, Miss Morris couldn't finish it because she was in tears. And I had to stand up and finish it. What did Miss Morris do? Inadvertently that day, I'm sure, is that she passed on to this child that a story is not about school, it's about communication between one human being and another. And it means something. It means something a lot more than this horrible word, literacy, which is What did I feel like when I was told I was going to have a film made of Warhorse by this unknown Mr. Speilberg? At my house where I live, I spent most of my time running a project called Farms for City Children. What happens is we have kids from big cities, primary school kids, usually year sixes, who come and live on the work on the farm for a week. And that is a place 500 yards down the road. And I worked for 25 years with them on the farm. They stay for a whole week, weekends and everything. If the phone rings any time in our house during that time, we would have to answer it because, and there was this moment when the phone rang and it was a family joke. And I would say, I'd better answer it, it could be Steven Spielberg. One day it was. And it was, I mean, just, you could imagine how bizarre the whole thing was. And then I got to go to meet him and talk to him, which was interesting because he, like me, is a kid at heart who loves telling stories. He's a storyteller. And anyone who can tell E.T., have you seen it? Anyone who can tell in the same lifetime, E.T. and Schindler's List. What kind of a storyteller is that? You may not love all his films, but this man can tell stories. And that's what enchanted me, but I knew I got a storyteller who could feel the power of Warhorse, whatever it was, I put it up there on the street. I mean, like with every film, every play, there are parts I like and parts I don't like. But he did it. It was an honest film. He's a very emotional man, and he loved it. And that's all you can really ask. So. Do I find it hard to write the first bit of the story? Is that what you asked me? I think you asked that for a reason. You sat down here in front of an empty piece of paper and tried to begin. And you find it a bit difficult from time to time? Join that club too. Can I tell you there's a solution? And this is something that Ted Hughes told me. He told me at one point when I was struggling with it, that I had to be very, very careful never to start a book until I had soaked myself completely in the story. That I knew the people, I knew the landscape in which it was being set, I could feel it, I could see it, I could smell it, or I knew all the backstories of the people in it. But he says, don't know the end. Let the end make itself from what you've done. It's a really interesting piece of magic. But I think he's right. If you soak yourself in it completely, you can let the story take its own shape. But if you start too soon, and you haven't done enough research, and you haven't dreamt it out, do you know something that kids do at school a lot, which is not their fault, and it's not the teacher's fault either, is you have to sit down in front of a piece of paper and write something, you have to do it now. And you've got 45 minutes. Well, it's really hard. The teachers know it's hard. Children know it's hard. I have to tell you, if someone else needs to do that, I would have a serious problem.
In your book, Born to Run, did Becky die?
Now you got me. You remember I told you I've written 120-something books? And you've asked me about, oh, Becky, no, she didn't die. Read it again. I also didn't make it clear. Read it again. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think she died.
I would leave you crying when there's room on my horse for two. Climb up here, Jack, and don't be crying. I can go just as fast with two.